Justin Trudeau is doing everything he can to avoid an actual public inquiry into China's interference in our elections. Welcome back. Justin Trudeau is, well, he's doing his best to avoid this. Now, Ottawa is nearing final stages to launch its interference inquiry. They're claiming this in a Globe and Mail article, just stating basically, yeah, we're gonna get to it. We're getting around to it. No problem. This is where we're going. Stephen Chase on Twitter saying Trudeau accused of stalling on public inquiry into foreign interference. Well, why? Why is it that he's stalling on this? Well, it looks really bad. And it's really funny because we don't even have an ethics commissioner at this point looking into this. But this should be actually a criminal matter at this juncture in Canadian history, because never before has it been revealed that there has been this level of interference from a foreign government in our own elections, and involved with such high levels of government. Pierre Poilievre taking to social media to say that he's made accusations. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accused Justin Trudeau of wanting to avoid the public inquiry into claims that China interfered in Canada's elections because he benefited from Beijing's meddling. And while we all kind of know that to be a fact, but let's just hear from the words of Pierre Poilievre as he said this in a presser just yesterday.
Interference inquiry. On the foreign interference inquiry, he said that the opposition parties are still working together, that something's happening. What's the holdup on calling this inquiry in your mind? Because he says you haven't come to a consensus yet.
We gave him names, we gave him a mandate, and we've been waiting ever since. The holdup is Justin Trudeau. Only Justin Trudeau has the authority to call a public inquiry. As leader of the opposition, I have no authority under the Inquiries Act. I've made my suggestions and I'm now waiting for him. You almost wonder if Trudeau doesn't want the truth to come out about Beijing's interference in our democracy before the next election so that he can allow that interference to happen all over again. He benefited from it twice, and he knew it because we know that he had the briefings on it, and he did absolutely nothing. And now he's blocking inquiry. He didn't introduce a foreign influence registry to identify those paid agents who work for foreign dictators to manipulate our politics. It seems to me Trudeau is fine to allow the foreign influence to continue as long as it benefits him. A Poilievre-led government will call a full inquiry, expose the foreign influence, and we will have a foreign influence registry. Finally, we will make sure that we shut down every foreign-controlled police station in this country, because the proud and patriotic Canadians of Chinese origin came here to get away from that oppression. They should not be harassed by a foreign communist dictatorship in this country here in Canada. Justin Trudeau said he admires the basic dictatorship, the basic communist dictatorship in China. I believe him.
I believe him, he says. Absolutely. Let's get more into this story. But first, you guys asked for it. You wanted merchandise. You wanted some hoodies, sweatshirts, things like that. Here we got Tamara Leach modeling off some of this stuff on the merch store. Link in the description down below. Go get your stuff. It is available now. Now, getting into the story. Earlier this year, from Canadian Security Intelligence Services, claimed that Chinese government saw the re-election of Justin Trudeau as an ideal outcome during the last election. This is in the middle of the pandemic, of course, back in 2021. Of course, they interfered in the previous election to that as well. According to sources, the Chinese government oversaw a campaign to undermine the chances of a conservative victory in the 2021 election. It is alleged by media reports that up to 11 candidates benefited from China's interference, and they were mostly from the Liberal Party of Canada. Now, they know this information. Actually, Trudeau's cabinet has this information. It's available, but they will not release it. They won't release what 11 candidates, and if there are any on the Conservative side or in the NDP, they got to go too. They all got to go. If anybody in there has been influenced or is under the purview of the Chinese Communist Party, yeah, they got to go, and we really need that to be the case. Other allegations include illicit donations to the Pierre Trudeau Foundation under the direction of Beijing and the Chinese government, busing supporters to a Liberal MP's nomination meeting. According to Pierre Poilievre, if elected, his government would create a foreign agent registry. Now, this is not a odd thing for anybody to do. Now, there's been pushback from the left on this one. Why? Why is that? Every other country, every other civilized country in the world has a registry for foreign agents. If you are a foreign agent or a representative of a foreign country, you have to register if you're going to be speaking with the government and speaking with leaders in the government. This is part of democracy. But, you know, Trudeau has his lip service to democracy, but he really admires China's basic dictatorship. And this is the whole point of what we've been saying here. Norman Spector taking to Twitter, showing this article from the Globe and Mail, Trudeau accused of stalling on public inquiry into foreign interference. Of course he's stalling. Only Justin Trudeau has the authority to call a public inquiry, Pierre Poilievre told reporters Monday. He said the Conservatives submitted names of proposed Canadians to head an inquiry, as did other parties. And he said the Conservatives agreed to draft a draft of terms of reference for the probe. We gave him names, we gave him a mandate, and we've been waiting ever since. He hasn't taken action on this. Of course, he's dragging his feet. The Conservative leader said government led by him would launch a public inquiry into a foreign agent, public inquiry and launch a foreign registry. Of course, this is not welcome by Trudeau and the Liberals and possibly the NDP. Well, the NDP with the coalition government, I mean, you cannot separate them at this point. They are both on the same page for the same mandate that Trudeau has been putting out, of course, because they could call for an election tomorrow if they wanted to. Of course, Jagmeet Singh saying, using this clever excuse of, well, we don't trust our elections in Canada. We don't trust our elections in Canada, and this is why we can't call for an election in Canada. Wow, what an excuse. What an amazing excuse this man has. We have here on the heels, Norman Spector also talking about the crisis with the Chinese police stations. So on the heels of the RCMP's thesis, also took a close look at Chinese police stations in Canada. The conclusion in a document obtained by La Presse under the Access to Information Act are unequivocal. The 7 police stations identified in Canada in the recent times, this was a real thing. Chinese government had police stations policing Chinese, former Chinese citizens, Canadian citizens, people living in Canada, either permanent residents or citizens of Canada, formerly from China. And they were using these police stations to intimidate people so that they can go after them or their family members that still live back in China. Denise Batters saying here, yet months after the House of Commons voted 3 separate times for a public inquiry on Beijing election interference, and months after Trudeau's special rapporteur resigned, we all know about David Johnston, the member of the Trudeau Foundation who was assigned the job to look into foreign interference involving the Trudeau Foundation. Of course, Trudeau still hasn't called a public inquiry. This is terrible. Of course it's terrible. Other people taking to social media to talk about this, another double down by the Liberals. Instead of calling for an inquiry into foreign interference by Beijing's communist regime in Canada's elections, Trudeau's environment minister holds a formal position in their government. Enough is enough. Call for an inquiry. And we reported on this last week about Stephen Guilbeault and his new job in the Chinese government. Yes, he's also, I guess you could call him a double agent. He's working for the Chinese government as well as the Canadian government. Isn't that convenient? Michael Barrett taken to Twitter to say Beijing regime has interfered in our democracy and intimidated our citizens. Why is Trudeau stalling on a public inquiry? Enough delays, enough foot dragging. Public inquiry now. People are demanding it. They're not requesting it at this point. Even Pierre Poilievre taking to social media again to say while Trudeau refuses to call for a public inquiry into Beijing in foreign interference, and I would say a truly public inquiry, we had the David Johnson one, in our election, Stephen Guilbeault will visit China to meet with communist government officials, having a cabinet minister work for that dictatorship on environmental policy while he shuts down our industry and taxes our energy is outright betrayal. Absolutely it is. It absolutely is. Rex Glacier saying, when will Prime Minister Trudeau call for a public inquiry into Chinese interference in Canadian elections? Answer, never. If he can help it. Boom. This is in response to Tricia saying, sovereignty is not a subsidiary issue. It underpins all others and our country itself. It is, if this government won't call a public inquiry, then it's time to replace it with one that will. And of course, you know, Jagmeet Singh's argument, well, we can't have an election if we can't trust our election or electoral process. We can't do that. So let's just have these rulers sit in office. Absolutely. Debbie on Twitter saying Trudeau refuses to hire an ethics commissioner, sends Guilbeault to China. No closer to a public inquiry at this point. He is laughing in our face. And this goes on the story that, of course, yeah, we don't have an ethics commissioner at this point. Why? Well, because the last one had to quit after Trudeau stood up and defended the appointment of a cabinet minister's sister-in-law to be the top ethics post. You can't make this up, folks. This is the story here in Canada, and this is where we are. But where else are we? Well, they're also dragging their feet. Well, this one is required by law, but we're going to get an update soon on the Emergencies Act inquiry recommendations. And this is from Ottawa here, the CBC. The federal government says it will have an update in the upcoming days on what it plans to do with the dozens of recommendations out of the independent inquiry that investigated Ottawa's decision to invoke the never-before-used Emergencies Act. I laugh because the independent inquiry was held by Justice Paul Rouleau, who's a longtime Liberal donor, friend, Laurentian, elite, the whole... I can't make this up. Again, following 6 weeks of intense testimony after reading thousands of pages of documents, Commissioner Paul Rouleau, totally independent guy, released a highly anticipated report this year that found Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met the very high threshold needed to invoke the controversial legislation a year prior. Now, the very high threshold, he admits actually in his report, was never met, but he felt like it should have been met. So therefore, in his inquiry, his conclusion was it met. It was met. It was totally met. But this is where we are with this. But remember all those promises that we got from Justin Trudeau. This is another one from Pierre Poilievre. When rent doubled, and now your home is not his job. And this is where we are after all of this. Just show this clip here.
We need real change in affordable housing.
The federal government is not only back in housing, but we're here to stay.
We're moving forward with a national housing strategy.
We made housing a priority. The federal government does have a role to play in housing.
I'll be blunt as well. Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
Okay, it's not a federal responsibility, even though they meddled in it. It seems like everything that Justin Trudeau touches turns to absolute... I'm not even going to say the word on this video, but hey, leave this one up to you guys. What do you think is going to happen with this inquiry? Do you think they're just going to brush it off and see nothing happen from this and go in all the way into 2025 in the election that's upcoming? Well, we may even see an election earlier. There's hints that there might be one. I know they've been saying in the fall, and then they're saying now in the spring. But the one in the spring, there's actually good sources to say that this might actually happen. And this might be the reason why they're all campaigning or seemingly campaigning at this point. But only time will tell. We have until 2025 until there actually is a push for an actual election. So we'll see what happens. But leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.